Hello, I'm Langston, and I'm back on my channel, Military Election Forecasting. And today I'm going to be talking about my last prediction of the 2024 Senate elections. Just giving my last, prediction of this video. So I went ahead and already filled out the safe states for both parties. Of these states, there are multiple that could potentially fall under 15%. I categorize safe is more than 15%. I categorize likely from 5 to 15%. I categorize lean from 1 to 5, and I categorize tilt from to under 1%. So of those states, I think we could see Utah, potentially even Nebraska, Missouri, Indiana, as well as West Virginia or Mississippi potentially fall under 15%. I really doubt it, especially in the case of West Virginia, primarily because Joe Manchin is not running. And even with Joe Manchin, this is a state Donald Trump's going to win by more than 40. Mississippi, Biden and his black turnout problems, I don't realistically think it'll be competitive enough to be under 15%. Indiana with Trump being on the ballot, his very really strong appeal to working class voters. I think he'll be able to hold Republicans more than 15% over in the state. And I don't think Utah is shifted left enough, as well as Nebraska, to be under 15%. But I would not be shocked if they did fall under 15%. I do think they will shift left in 2024. So now I'm going to be moving on to the more competitive states, the likely states. So for Democrats, I'm going to be doing the likely states first. Also, I think I forgot to bring up. I think that Delaware, Connecticut, even potentially Rhode Island, as well as Maine, Minnesota, or New Mexico could all fall under 15%. I think that Biden will hold strong enough up in the northeastern states to be able to win by more than 15%. In Minnesota, Amy Klobuchar is a very strong candidate, as well as Martin Heinrich, as well as what Democrats are providing in Maine as well. So I'm going to move on to the likely states for Democrats. And I have Virginia, as well as New Jersey, and Pennsylvania going to Democrats by more than 5%, but less than 15%. And in Virginia, you hear a lot of hype around home Cal. You hear a lot of Republicans talking about, um, you know, Virginia might be stagnating, Virginia might be shifting rightward, which I really doubt. Like, I think Democrats have really struggled with turning out their base in Virginia. Like many southern states, the base of Democratic Party support is Black voters. And yes, there are worries. Yes, you might see black turnout absolutely collapse in the state, and that could really hurt Democrats in Virginia. But in a presidential election, it still wouldn't be enough to allow Republicans to get anywhere close to winning the state. On top of the fact that, I still think Democrats will do decent enough with turnout from those voters, as well as improve their support amongst upper class suburban voters in the DC suburbs to keep Virginia trending left. In my opinion, I expect Tim Kaine to win Virginia by more than double digits. In New Jersey, you are seeing, the incumbent there. He is still continuing to run despite all of his scandals and etc. And, that's realistically a problem for Democrats. Likely they are going to be able to unseat him. But, as of now, there's a huge worry that, he might be the nominee. And if he is, that would be a big problem for Democrats. But if not, even with him being the nominee, I'm sure Democrats will still win by more than five. But I could definitely see this race being more competitive, despite those circumstances. In Pennsylvania, I'm very confident that Bob Casey Jr. will be able to win re-election by a pretty substantial margin. I do think, like, obviously, Democrats and their black turnout problems, Trump being on the ballot, helping in the rural areas and working class areas, will limit Bob Casey's ability to dramatically outperform. I do think Bob Casey Jr. would do better than Biden in the suburbs as well as in the working class areas, and that will really help him. Like, I think, he'll probably win by, I would say, in around 6 to 10 points as of now. 10 at the high, maybe six at the low, probably around, 5 to 7, somewhere in that time frame, in that, statistical frame. But we could see it's going to be somewhat interesting. But Democrats have a substantial advantage going into 2024 in this race. For Republicans, we have Missouri as well as Florida. These are states that Republicans are going to win pretty substantially. In Missouri, more competitive, more Republican in Florida, obviously. I think that Josh Hawley, who is the Republican incumbent there, very controversial. Trump will probably barely win Missouri by more than 15. And, Josh Hawley will probably underperform, especially in the suburbs and, the more affluent areas of Missouri, which are shifting to the left anyway. And I think that he's not as strong of a candidate for working class voters as Donald Trump and in rural areas. In Florida, I'm very curious. I think Florida will be a lot more interesting than a lot of us expect going into 2024. I do think that the candidate there, Rick Scott, might do a little bit worse in certain parts of Florida than Donald Trump just because of, more competitiveness. I think that he will be saved by rural voters in the panhandle. Like, I think that rural working class voters in the panhandle, I think he'll do better with Hispanic voters in southern Florida, in particular Cuban, Venezuelans, and etc. Um, in southern Florida relative to his previous races. But in my opinion, I still think that it could be lean. I could see it being, maybe 3 to 4%. But in my opinion, I think it'd be like a 6 to 8% margin, 5 to 8% margin, somewhere around that frame. I think Missouri would be like a, 11 to 13%, maybe 13, 14% margin for Republicans. Now, moving on to the lean states. So I'm going to be categorizing the lean states for Democrats first. So with that, we have Nevada, Arizona, and Wisconsin. These are the lean states for Democrats. So in Nevada, I expect for Jackie Rosen to do pretty well in her race. I think she'll probably win by 3 to 4 points, if not more. Maybe upwards of a likely margin. I think that, she'll do pretty well with Hispanic voters in Las Vegas. I think she'll keep up I think she'll do pretty well. In 2022, Democrats did really bad with turnout there. You hear a lot of people making that argument, oh, well, um, Clark County's trending to the right, even though they don't really have that much evidence to back that up. I've also heard arguments saying, oh, well, there are Republicans moving to Nevada from California and et cetera, which is like there are way more, Asian Americans, Hispanics, Black people moving to Nevada than Republicans moving from California. And also, you do need to factor in Nevada is a minority majority state. Other minority majority states, California, New Mexico, Georgia, Texas, as well as Maryland. All of these other states, Hawaii as well. It's a clear, correlation between them. All of those states are Democratic states, are shifting dramatically in Democrats' favor. Arizona is another state that's projected to become a minority majority state very soon. And you see Arizona has also been trending rapidly to the left. So at the end of the day, like we see the similarities demographically. We're talking about New Mexico. We're talking about all these minority majority states. Nevada is no different. And Las Vegas metro area is becoming a lot more diverse, a lot more it's already minority majority county. Nevada is already minority majority as a state, but you know what I'm saying? Like it's becoming even more such. That's a really big problem for Republicans. I do think, Donald Trump will help his Republican candidates out in the rural areas, but I think that, obviously Democrats she'll probably win Clark County by double digits. And I think that, she'll keep up the trends in Washoe County. And, with that, Republicans don't realistically have too much of a chance of taking her out. In Arizona, I'm very confident and Ruben Gallego, I think Ruben Gallego is going to be able to win his race probably by 2 to 3 points. I think that he will outrun Joe Biden, and in the urban areas, I think he'll do better in Tucson in particular than him. I think he'll do similar in Phoenix. I think he'll do better in the city of Phoenix, but I don't think he would do as well in the suburbs of Phoenix. But I think he'll still win Maricopa by the same amount. I think he'll definitely do better in Santa Cruz County, like do better in these rural Hispanic areas. I think Trump would get out his base and some of these more conservative rural parts of rural exurban parts of Arizona, in particular Mojave County. This is where Republicans get a decent amount of votes, but realistically the suburbs are his biggest nightmare. You hear people saying, oh, Kristen Sinema, she might be in a race, which is true. I don't think she'll have that big of an impact, but at the end of the day, she probably will be in a race. I think she will definitely help um Democrats actually, because I think that like I talked about in my last three previous videos prior to this one, is Democrats when it comes to talking about you know more so moderate Republicans, Kristen Sinema is more popular amongst Republicans than Democrats. You have a lot of moderate Republicans in Arizona, which are shifting Arizona to the left, as well as demographics who vote Republican because of party line. Kristen Sinema would give them another option. Like she would give them another choice rather than to vote for Democrats. Like you know what I'm saying, like the voters that are voting Democrat, they're gonna vote Democrat regardless. So at the end of the day, like it's like she's not gonna really help Republicans in any instance, because a lot of the voters that are voting for Republicans don't even want to vote for them anyway. You know what I'm saying? So, the ones that have decided I'm going to vote for Democrats, they already decided that anyway. Like, they're not going to change their mind and say, oh, I'm going to vote for someone I don't even approve of. You know what I'm saying? They've already moved more left wing in terms of their ideology. So, because of that, like, I don't realistically see, her helping Republicans anywhere. And when talking about, in particular, candidate like Carrie Lake, who is very, unpopular amongst those kinds of voters, they don't realistically have too much of a chance. So that's Arizona. I'm pretty confident Democrats have an advantage there, as well as in Wisconsin. I think that in Wisconsin, Democrats they will be struggling to turn out black voters in Milwaukee. I think that you could also see Democrats struggling to turn out youth voters in Madison. That would really hurt them. And with turning out their base in Madison, these voters have really turned their backs on Joe Biden, in particular during the Israel Palestine conflict, where you have a lot of younger voters, which are the primary demographic in Madison, being more supportive of Palestine. And because of Joe Biden's lack of addressing that issue from their perspective, they don't realistically see a need to vote for him. I do think that, that might cause Joe Biden to lose Wisconsin, but Tammy Baldwin should be more than safe in terms of being able to hold on to enough of those voters to do well. I think she'll be able to keep up the trends in the wild counties. I think she'll crack 40% in Waukesha. Like, I think she'll get roughly 43% of the vote in Waukesha. I think she'll only lose Ozaki by maybe, you know, 5,000 votes. Not 5,000, I'm sorry. I think she'll lose by like, 5 or 6 points. I think she'll only lose Washington by like 34, 35. Like, put a substantial dent, as well as, keep up I think she'll do a lot better than Joe Biden in the driftless area. Like, in some of the more class parts of Wisconsin, she will still do a lot worse than she did last time, but I think she'll do better, which means she'll probably win Wisconsin by like 4 to 5, maybe 3 to 4 points, similar to what you saw from Tony Evers, but it could be a little bit more than that. So when looking at the lean states for Republicans, I only have two. I have Ohio as well as Texas. These are the states I am confident the Republicans will win by more. I think they'll win both of these states by more than 1%. So starting off with Texas, Texas is a state, despite Biden's unpopularity, I think Democrats will continue improving in. We saw this in 2016, where Hillary Clinton did 7 points better than Barack Obama, despite losing nationwide. Despite Hillary Clinton and all of her problems, she still did a lot better than Barack Obama in the state. I could see that slowing down because I think one of Biden's biggest problems will be with turning out more, more so Black Hispanic Americans in Harris County and Dallas County, as well as, Hispanic voters in San Antonio. I do think a lot of the moderate military veterans will continue trending San Antonio to the left, but in terms of like, there's with the base of Democrats, I think he'll struggle there, as well as with a lot of youth voters in Austin because of the Israel Palestine conflict. But I think enough of them will show up to continue the trends in these counties. I do think Biden will do really well in Denton and Collin. I think that he'll win Collin. I think that he'll win Denton. He'll maybe nearly lose Denton, or nearly flip Denton. I think he'll smack Democrats and smack Republicans in Williamson. And I think that, Colin Allred might even outrun Joe Biden in some of these areas. I think that, he'll do pretty decent in El Paso as well. I think Democrats will struggle with turnout there. And I think he'll do a lot better than Biden in the Rio Grande Valley and just do better in general compared to Joe Biden's performances last time. So for Colin Howard, I think, especially against a candidate like Ted Cruz, he has a lot of places to do better. But I think that Donald Trump will really help Ted Cruz in these rural areas, in these more so working class parts of Texas. And that will realistically stop Democrats from, being able to overcome him, especially when they're already struggling to turn out voters in Houston, in Dallas, and San Antonio, and Austin as well. But I don't think they won't turn out enough to be able to continue turning Texas to the left. So in my opinion, I think that, he will win by 2 to 4 points, in my opinion. I think that Ted Cruz will be reelected in his state. I think Democrats have a better chance of winning Texas than winning in Ohio, which I did bring up. In Ohio, I think that Sherrod Brown will probably go down by, 2 to 5 points. I could see it potentially even being likely if things get really bad for Joe Biden. Ohio is a state where I think that Democrats don't really have anything going for them. I think they will do better in the suburbs, which will help. I think that Delaware County would be a place where you will see Democrats shine in 2024. Like, I think there are some parts, some of the suburban parts of Cincinnati, and et cetera. I think Democrats will be able to do a little bit better in. But by and large, you're going to really struggle in the working class areas. You're going to really struggle with black turnout. And some of these areas, and that's going to really hurt them, going into 2024. So, with them struggling to turn out black voters, with Trump making, gains in rural areas, making gains in working class areas, and Democrats not having enough votes in the suburbs to counteract them, Sherrod Brown doesn't really have that much of a place to improve. I do think he will put a dent in some of these rural areas, like put a dent in some of these working class areas. I don't think he'll put a substantial dent, but I definitely think he'll outrun Joe Biden. The biggest problem for him is, like I said, black turnout will be down in 2024, and that is the base of Democrat support in Ohio. So he can't really rely on those voters to really help him tremendously, which is something Democrats absolutely need if they're going to win Ohio, especially in an election, in a presidential election. Last time he won in a presidential election was in 2012 with Obama on the ballot. We know Obama boosted black turnout tremendously in inner cities like Cleveland, etc. So, that's a big problem for him. And, Sherrod Brown has never really done too well in the suburbs. He doesn't realistically have too much of appeal to suburban voters. We did see some of that change in 2018. But if you actually look at 2018, he did not do that much better than Joe Biden in the suburbs. And that was a blue wave year. I do think he will outrun Joe Biden by a couple points in the suburbs, but I think he needs to outrun Joe Biden pretty substantially in the suburbs to realistically have a shot. And with black turnout problems, with his failure to outrun Joe Biden tremendously in the suburbs, with Trump being able to make massive gains with rural working class voters in going 2024, unless Democrats can find a way to dramatically improve a black turnout, I don't realistically see him even being able to, be too competitive, let alone win. And I think even if Democrats get good numbers with black turnout and keep up the suburban trends, I think that Sherrod Brown still might not be favored. I think he might, be within a percent or two, but I don't know if that'll be able to push him over the hurdle. But that would give him a fighting chance. In my opinion, I don't realistically think he has too much of a fighting chance, at least as of now. So the last two states are tilt states. I'm going to label the last state, the tilt state for Republicans, and that is Montana. So Montana's a state I originally thought Democrats would win. And, I still think John Tester is a very strong candidate. And I think John Tester has a pretty good chance of winning. But I just think that John Tester's inability to overperform, especially in an election where Joe Biden's probably going to get smacked in Montana, I think that really hurt him. I think that, Trump will be able to tie in, his legal troubles, really galvanize rural support, really galvanize working class support in Montana. Yes, Montana is a left trending state, but I don't think it's left trending enough to save John Tester at this point. I think that Democrats do have a fighting chance in Montana compared to Ohio, at least. But in my opinion, I think the Republicans will just, they will, I think Trump will do too well in the rural areas and the working class areas. And with him campaigning probably with the Republican candidate that's running against John Tester, whether that's Ryan Zink or Matt Rosendale or Tim Sheehy, whoever, that would be enough to carry them to a narrow victory in 2024. The last thing I'm going to categorize is Michigan, and this is a very shocking one. I said it in my last video, but I think that Michigan is a realistic pickup opportunity for Republicans. And recently we saw this article come out where Democrats are afraid of their support with black voters in Georgia and Michigan. I don't know why they randomly chose Georgia, Michigan, because this is a problem in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania and North Carolina nationally. So I don't realistically know why Georgia and Michigan are the two states they decided to talk about. I do think that, Michigan in particular, at least in the Senate election, because Michigan is really the only state where I think that could realistically catch them up. But if you look at 2022, you'll see that, in 2020, you'll see Gary Peters only won Michigan by 1.7, and he was the incumbent. And, I said this when talking about Alyssa Slotkin. I think Alyssa Slotkin is not a strong candidate for Michigan. I think that she is a very weak candidate for black voters. I don't think she's too strong of a suburban candidate. And I think she is a good candidate for working class voters, but, with Trumping on the ballot, it's going to limit her ability to really connect with a lot of those voters. So we're already prepared, as many articles keeps rolling out, for Democrats to really struggle with turning out their base, which is black voters in Detroit, as well as, youth voters because of the Israel-Palestine conflict, as well as numerous other issues in Ann Arbor. So Democrats are already struggling with their base, as well as in Flint and Saginaw as well, with black voters. And that's a big problem for Democrats in Michigan. I do think something that will help Joe Biden at least is Oakland and Grand Rapids. I think the Democrats will be able to continue training those areas to the left. And I do think that she'll do decent in Ingham County. This is where Lansing is. But realistically, you know, we're cutting it close because we already talked about a scenario where Democrats are going to struggle with their base in Michigan. And we already see that, Democrats usually underperform. They usually underperform, the top of the ticket in the suburbs. We go to 2022, we'll see that, Gary Peters, he lost Kent County. But you look at Joe Biden won Kent County by 6 points. So, he pretty severely underperformed in there. And you look at 2022, 2016 as well. So you see Gary Peters, he lost Kent County by less than a point. Let's see how much Hillary Clinton lost the county by. I think it was more competitive. But Hillary Clinton, she lost by 3 points. So, she didn't do that much better than her there. We're gonna go to Oakland. Joe Biden won by 14. Let's see how much Gary Peters won by. So Gary Peters only won by 11. And let's look at how much Hillary Clinton won. So Hillary Clinton won by 8. So, he only outran Hillary Clinton by a couple points in these counties. And I do think that, as of now, Democrats are getting a lot more votes in the suburbs than they were back then. But, the suburbs are going to be what really saves her in this race because she can't rely on black voters, in my opinion. I think that Democrats will definitely get somewhat of a drop off in Wayne County and, in Flint, et cetera. So because of that, like, she can't really rely on a Democratic base in Michigan to save her. She'll just be relying on, enough of the suburban trends that Biden will be relying on, but she will underperform Joe Biden in those specific areas. So in my opinion, I talked about this in my last video. I just don't think she's a strong candidate for Democrats to be nominating. I do think that, because of, down ballot effect, I think that Joe Biden will win Michigan by enough to carry her over the top. But if things get really bad for Joe Biden, you could see a scenario where she could, nearly go down in Michigan if black turnout really does collapse, if youth turnout does as well. We are talking about a scenario where Democrats could easily come up short in Michigan, in my opinion. But also, I see a scenario where Democrats could also be able to flip Montana as well. So this is my 2024 Senate election prediction, my last one in 2023, and part 4 edition of this video. Thank you guys so much for tuning into my channel. Please like, comment, and subscribe down below. Make sure to have a nice day, you guys. Goodbye.